At my granddaughter's birthday party, my daughter-in-law told me to eat outside in the yard because I wasn't really family. She said this in front of 40 guests while live streaming on Instagram. My son nodded in agreement. I had given them everything: my house, my money, my dignity. I thought I was being a good father and grandfather. What I didn't know was that they were waiting for me to die so they could collect my $1.8 million life insurance policy. 3 days earlier, I had recorded a conversation between them discussing exactly that. My name is Richard Coleman. I'm 64 years old, and I was a veterinarian for 35 years before retiring. That night, I made a decision that would change everything. But before I tell you what happened next, let me know in the comments where you're listening from and whether you've ever felt unappreciated by family. And make sure to subscribe because this story has twists you won't see coming. I heard that conversation 3 days ago. I'm Richard Coleman, 64 years old, retired veterinarian from suburban Pennsylvania. For 35 years, I cared for animals of every size and species, from tiny hamsters with broken legs to massive draft horses with colic. Every life mattered to me. I built a successful practice through hard work and genuine compassion. 37 years. I was married to Martha, my college sweetheart. She was the love of my life, my partner in everything. We raised our son Nathan together in a beautiful colonial house with white picket fence. The American dream was made real through decades of sacrifice and dedication. 8 months ago, cancer took Martha from me. Stage 4 breast cancer was discovered too late. We fought it together for 8 months with everything modern medicine could offer. Chemotherapy that made her violently sick, radiation that burned her delicate skin, experimental treatments that cost more than most people's annual salaries. Nothing worked. The cancer was aggressive, relentless, and ultimately victorious. The medical bills were crushing. $420,000 for treatments that couldn't save her life. Our insurance covered most expenses, but not everything. Copays, deductibles, and experimental procedures added up quickly. I sold our house, $680,000 after 30 years of mortgage payments. That house held every precious memory Martha and I had built together. Our first Christmas tree as newlyweds, Nathan's first steps across the hardwood floors, birthday parties in the backyard, holiday dinners around the dining room table Martha had inherited from her grandmother, Sunday mornings reading newspapers in bed, quiet evenings on the front porch watching neighbors walk their dogs, all of it gone to pay doctors who couldn't perform the one miracle we desperately needed. Martha said something that I will never forget. After selling the house, I was left with $260,000 in cash and a completely broken heart. Martha died holding my hand in that sterile hospital room on a Tuesday morning in March. Machines beeped constantly. Nurses whispered respectfully in the hallway. The smell of disinfectant couldn't mask the approaching reality of death. Her breathing had become labored during the night. By dawn, we both knew the end was near. She was barely conscious, but her grip on my hand remained surprisingly strong. Her last coherent words weren't about our decades of love or precious memories we'd shared. She didn't reminisce about our wedding day or Nathan's childhood achievements. Instead, she gripped my hand with what little strength remained and whispered something that would haunt me forever. "Promise me you'll find peace," she said. Her voice was barely audible above the ventilator. I promised her I would, though I had no idea how peace was possible without her. Then she talked about Nathan, our only child. "He's a good boy, just lost sometimes." Martha was always defending Nathan, even at the very end. Even when he'd barely visited during her 8-month illness. Even when he seemed more interested in financial logistics than emotional support during our family crisis. "That insurance money should help him start over," she continued. We'd discussed the life insurance policy several times during her illness. $1.8 million accumulated over 35 years of premium payments. I'd listed Nathan as the sole beneficiary when he was just 6 years old, back when protecting your children's future seemed like the most important responsibility of fatherhood. But I don't know what Nathan is thinking about that money. As Martha's breathing slowed to nothing, I made another sacred promise to her memory. I would take care of Nathan and his family. I would be the grandfather little Sophia deserved. I would honor Martha's dying wish by keeping our fractured family together through shared love and mutual support.
These seemed like reasonable goals for a grieving widower trying to find purpose in an empty world.
The funeral was small and private, exactly as Martha had requested. She never enjoyed being the center of attention, and didn't want elaborate ceremonies marking her departure. Nathan and Victoria attended with 3-year-old Sophia, who didn't fully understand why Grandma wouldn't be coming home anymore. During the service, I noticed Nathan and Victoria whispering about practical matters, while I grieved openly. Victoria kept checking her phone for social media notifications. Nathan talked quietly with the insurance agent who'd attended out of professional courtesy. I overheard fragments of their conversation that should have concerned me more at the time.
"Beneficiary paperwork needs updating," Nathan said. "How long does processing usually take?" the agent replied. "Standard claims are processed within 30 days of receiving a death certificate," came the professional response. It felt inappropriate to discuss financial logistics during Martha's funeral, but grief makes everything feel wrong. People handle loss differently. Some cry openly. Others focus on practical details to avoid emotional overwhelm. I assume Nathan was simply trying to manage difficult circumstances in his own way.
After the burial service at Riverside Cemetery, Nathan approached me in the parking lot while I stood beside Martha's fresh grave. His tie was already loosened, his formal demeanor shifting toward casual conversation about my immediate future living arrangements. The first week, everything seemed fine. "Dad, you can't live in that tiny rental apartment alone," Nathan said with apparent concern. He was absolutely right about my housing situation. The one-bedroom apartment I'd hastily rented after selling our house was depressing beyond description. White walls without personality, no memories embedded in the rooms, no trace of Martha's presence anywhere. The silence felt suffocating after 37 years of sharing space with someone you love unconditionally. "Come stay with us," Victoria added with surprising sweetness. "Sophia needs her grandfather around, especially now." That argument resonated deeply with my grieving heart. My granddaughter was the only remaining source of pure joy in my devastated world. 3 years old, full of innocent energy, always running to hug me whenever we visited. Her laughter could temporarily lift the crushing weight of loss that followed me everywhere since Martha's death. "We have plenty of space in our house," Nathan continued persuasively. "The garage has been converted into a really nice bedroom with its own bathroom. You'd have complete privacy while still being close to family." A garage conversion, not the guest bedroom upstairs where visiting family members usually stayed. But I was genuinely grateful for any invitation that would keep me connected to Nathan, Victoria, and precious Sophia during this impossibly difficult time. Victoria seemed genuinely enthusiastic about having me move in with their small family. She helped carry my suitcase to the converted garage room, chatting cheerfully about household routines and family schedules. "We're so excited to have you here, Dad," she said warmly. She'd never called me Dad before this conversation. During the 4 years Nathan and Victoria had been married, I was always Rick or Nathan's father in her vocabulary. There is one detail about Nathan's insurance that he doesn't know. Nathan seemed nervously energetic during my first week living in their converted garage room. He kept asking detailed questions about my financial paperwork and insurance documentation. "Have you received any official documents that need reviewing or signing, Dad?" he asked repeatedly. I had indeed received several items from the insurance company, standard beneficiary confirmation forms and policy status updates that required my signature as the policy owner. Being overwhelmed by grief, I signed most paperwork without reading it carefully. Mourning makes you careless about administrative details that normally receive careful attention. Your brain focuses on emotional survival, while practical matters get handled automatically. Nathan seemed particularly interested in the life insurance policy specifics. "Do you need help organizing any of the paperwork?" he offered helpfully. Sophia was the brilliant bright spot during those early adjustment days. She would run to me screaming, "Grandpa Rick," whenever I returned from errands or appointments. Her tiny arms wrapped around my legs with pure, unconditional love. For those precious moments, the world felt manageable again. Children have an extraordinary ability to live completely in the present moment, which can be healing for adults drowning in past regrets and future fears. Victoria established clear household rules during my first week as their house guest. "We eat dinner together at 6 o'clock sharp every evening," she announced. "Please keep your room tidy since we occasionally give house tours to friends. Feel free to help around the house with cleaning and maintenance. Staying active is excellent for physical and mental health at your age. These requests seemed completely reasonable for someone living rent-free in their converted garage space. What Nathan didn't know was a crucial detail about the life insurance policy that could change everything with a single phone call. Nathan didn't know I could change everything with just one phone call. The life insurance policy was originally purchased in 1989 when Nathan was just 6 years old and starting elementary school. $180 per month seemed like an enormous financial commitment for a young veterinarian building his practice and supporting a growing family. But protecting my wife and son felt like the most important responsibility of fatherhood. Young fathers understand that their death could devastate their family financially, so life insurance provides essential peace of mind. 35 years of monthly premium payments totaled $75,600, a significant investment that had grown substantially over decades. The current policy value was $1.8 million, representing an excellent return on investment through careful financial planning and consistent payments. I'd never told Nathan the exact monetary amount involved. He knew about the policy's existence, but assumed it covered maybe $200,000 or $300,000, enough to pay funeral expenses and cover some outstanding debts, nothing more than basic financial protection. During those difficult first weeks living in Nathan and Victoria's house, I mentioned the policy's actual value during casual dinner conversation. "The insurance will provide $1.8 million when I pass away," I said while helping clear dishes. Nathan's eyes widened with obvious shock. Victoria suddenly became extremely interested in the conversation, asking detailed questions about my health status, daily exercise routine, and nutritional habits. All of her inquiries were framed as loving concern for my well-being, naturally. What Nathan didn't understand was a fundamental aspect of life insurance ownership that could completely change his financial expectations. As the policy owner, I retained full control over all aspects of the contract, including beneficiary designation. The beneficiary could be changed at any time with a simple phone call to the insurance company, requiring only my signature and proper identification for verification. I should have realized this was a mistake. My veterinary career had taught me valuable lessons about loyalty and betrayal that applied to both animals and humans. Animals are refreshingly honest about their intentions and motivations. They don't pretend to love you while secretly planning to exploit your vulnerability. Dogs either love you genuinely or they don't. There's no deception involved. Cats may be aloof, but they're not calculating your death for financial gain. Humans, unfortunately, can be far more complicated and manipulative than any animal I'd ever treated. I had saved enough money to live independently and comfortably for the remainder of my life. The $260,000 from selling our house, combined with my monthly pension of $2,100 from the veterinary practice, provided complete financial security. I wasn't living with Nathan and Victoria out of financial necessity or desperation. I was there because losing Martha had absolutely shattered my entire world, and being close to family felt like the only emotional anchor available during this devastating period. I genuinely wanted to watch Sophia grow up during her most formative years. I wanted to feel useful and needed again after retirement had left me somewhat aimless. I wanted to honor Martha's dying wish that I find peace with our son and his family. Looking back with perfect clarity, I should have recognized this arrangement as a fundamental mistake from the very beginning. But grief clouds judgment and makes terrible decisions feel reasonable and even necessary. Nathan had been such a curious, loving boy during his childhood years. I'd taught him about animal behavior, about showing compassion to vulnerable creatures, about treating every living being as inherently valuable regardless of size or species. Somewhere during his journey from childhood to adulthood, those important lessons had been forgotten or deliberately abandoned for more selfish priorities. That's when I started to understand. Victoria was 26 years old with expensive lifestyle tastes that far exceeded her modest and unpredictable income. She called herself a social media lifestyle influencer with approximately 50,000 Instagram followers. Her monthly earnings averaged around $15,000 during good months, but many months generated significantly less revenue from sponsorships and promotional content. The influencer economy is notoriously unstable and unpredictable for people without massive followings. Nathan worked in real estate sales, which meant struggling to close deals in an extremely competitive market with many experienced agents fighting for the same clients. His annual income averaged around $45,000, but real estate commissions come in irregular waves. Some months he earned nothing at all. Other months brought substantial commissions from luxury home sales. The unpredictability made budgeting extremely difficult for a family trying to maintain an upper-middle-class lifestyle. Together, Nathan and Victoria had accumulated $78,000 in credit card debt from attempting to maintain a social media image they couldn't actually afford. Designer clothing for Instagram photos, expensive organic food for healthy lifestyle content, professional photography services, beauty treatments, travel expenses for lifestyle content creation. Everything required to maintain Victoria's influencer brand cost substantially more than their combined income could reasonably support. Their monthly house payment was $3,200, way too much for their irregular income stream. They'd purchased at the peak of the housing market, assuming Nathan's real estate career would generate consistently higher commissions. The financial pressure was enormous and growing worse every month as credit card minimums increased and their debt-to-income ratio reached dangerous levels. I learned these concerning financial details gradually through overheard phone conversations, financial documents carelessly left on kitchen counters, and late-night arguments between Nathan and Victoria about money problems. Victoria had clearly researched my financial assets before Nathan and I grew closer after Martha's death. She knew about the life insurance policy. She knew about my savings. She'd married Nathan partly for his potential inheritance prospects. But that's just the beginning. The first escalation in their treatment was subtle but deeply humiliating for someone who'd commanded respect throughout his professional career. Mrs. Johnson, our longtime neighbor from across the street, came over for afternoon coffee and casual conversation about neighborhood happenings. Victoria immediately issued a direct command. "Rick, can you make coffee for everyone?" Not, "Would you mind helping?" or "Could you please assist?" Just a straightforward order delivered like I was household staff rather than a family member. I was being treated like their personal servant in front of neighbors who had known and respected me for decades. Mrs. Johnson looked genuinely uncomfortable witnessing this dynamic. Nathan pretended not to notice anything inappropriate about his wife ordering his father around like hired help. I served coffee with visibly shaking hands, feeling my dignity and self-respect disappearing with each passing moment. After Mrs. Johnson departed, 3-year-old Sophia asked an innocent question that cut straight through my heart. Why does Grandpa always have to work? Even a small child could clearly observe that I was being treated differently than other family members. Victoria laughed off the observation with fake cheerfulness. Grandpa likes to help around the house. But her tone carried no genuine warmth or affection. I started to question the real motive. The second escalation involved unauthorized use of my personal finances for their lifestyle expenses. I discovered multiple charges on my credit card that I had never authorized or approved. Victoria's shopping sprees at expensive boutiques for Instagram content creation. Designer clothes she couldn't afford on her inconsistent influencer income. High-end organic groceries for her healthy lifestyle posts. Professional beauty treatments for maintaining her social media image. $2,400 in completely unauthorized charges accumulated over just 2 months of living in their house. When I confronted Nathan about these fraudulent transactions, he employed twisted logic to justify the theft. Dad, you're family now. What's ours is yours, right? He'd somehow convinced himself that my personal finances were community property available for their unlimited use. Victoria added her own manipulative justification. Rick should contribute to household expenses since he's living here rent-free. She made it sound like I owed them money for the privilege of sleeping in their converted garage room and being treated like domestic staff. This reasoning was completely backwards. I was providing free household labor while they stole my money for luxury purchases. Nathan had somehow gained access to one of my credit cards, supposedly for family emergencies only. I'd never authorized ongoing use for personal shopping expeditions and lifestyle maintenance. As the primary account holder, I maintained complete legal control over all my credit cards and bank accounts. I could cancel unauthorized access at any time without Nathan's permission or involvement. But maintaining family relationships felt more important than protecting my money at this stage of the manipulation. Martha had always taught me that money was just paper, while family connections were everything that truly mattered in life. I was still operating under the assumption that Nathan and Victoria cared about me as a person, rather than viewing me as a financial resource to be exploited. The third time I knew I was just a maid. The third escalation was public humiliation in front of our entire neighborhood community. Nathan and Victoria hosted a backyard barbecue party for 15 neighbors, including longtime friends who had known and respected me for decades. I looked forward to socializing with familiar faces and enjoying normal adult conversations about neighborhood happenings, local politics, and shared community concerns. But when dinner was served on their patio, Victoria made a shocking announcement in front of everyone. "Rick should eat inside the kitchen. There isn't enough room out here for all the adults." Nathan immediately nodded his agreement with this cruel exclusion. "Dad understands the situation," he added, as if speaking for me was perfectly acceptable. I was banished to eat alone at their kitchen table while my son and daughter-in-law entertained guests in the backyard where I'd hosted dozens of neighborhood gatherings during better years. Through the window, I could hear laughter and conversations about local gossip, children's school activities, and upcoming community events. Everything I was deliberately excluded from experiencing. Mrs. Johnson appeared in the kitchen during dessert time carrying a slice of chocolate cake. "I saved this especially for you," she whispered with genuine kindness, her eyes full of sympathetic understanding. That small gesture of human compassion almost completely broke my emotional composure. Someone still saw me as worthy of basic consideration. 3-year-old Sophia found me sitting alone during the party's peak social hour. "Grandpa, why aren't you outside with all the grown-ups?" she asked with innocent confusion. I knelt down to her eye level, forcing a reassuring smile. "Grandpa just needed some quiet time, sweetheart." But internally, I was dying a slow psychological death. For the third time, I understood my true position in this household with absolute clarity. I was not family. I was not a respected elder. I was domestic help who occasionally provided entertainment for the actual family members. And then there was Sophia's birthday. Something fundamental shifted in my consciousness that evening after the neighborhood barbecue humiliation. I began paying attention differently to Nathan and Victoria's private conversations, listening more carefully to tone and content instead of assuming benevolent intentions behind every interaction. I started pretending to nap in my garage room during their evening discussions, keeping my breathing steady and eyes closed while they whispered in the nearby kitchen. The thin walls between the garage conversion and main house allowed fragments of their conversations to reach my ears clearly. "When he finally dies, $1.8 million. Victoria's voice carried clearly through the wall. "Sooner rather than later would be ideal." Nathan responded with equal coldness. "Stress from living here might speed things up naturally." They were discussing my death like a business transaction with projected timelines and expected returns on investment. They knew the exact insurance policy amount down to the dollar. They were actively discussing whether my current living situation might accelerate my death through psychological stress and social isolation. I felt physically sick listening to my own son calculate the financial benefits of my funeral. These people weren't caring for me out of love, compassion, or family obligation. They were managing a valuable investment, monitoring its performance, and strategizing ways to maximize returns. I was a walking life insurance policy, not a human being deserving basic respect and dignity. I downloaded a voice recording application on my smartphone that night, determined to document their true feelings about my presence in their household. If they were going to discuss my death as a financial planning opportunity, I needed concrete evidence of their exploitation and emotional abuse. 3 days later, I captured a 12-minute conversation that would fundamentally change the trajectory of all our lives permanently and irreversibly. I had no idea what they were going to do. Victoria spent 3 weeks meticulously planning Sophia's 3rd birthday party with the obsessive attention to detail of a professional event coordinator. But her motivation wasn't celebrating her daughter's milestone. It was creating elaborate content for her Instagram lifestyle brand. She needed sophisticated party photos to maintain her social media image and attract potential sponsorship opportunities. The guest list included 40 people, longtime neighbors, Victoria's influencer friends from social media circles, Nathan's real estate colleagues, and family acquaintances. The invitation count was specifically designed for maximum social media exposure rather than intimate family celebration.
Every aspect of the party served Victoria's personal branding needs rather than Sophia's actual birthday enjoyment.
I genuinely looked forward to celebrating my granddaughter's special day. Sophia and I had developed a beautiful grandfather-granddaughter bond over the months I'd been living with their family. She called me Grandpa Rick with pure affection and always ran to embrace me whenever I returned from appointments or errands around town. I purchased a special teddy bear with a built-in voice recorder for Sophia's birthday gift. When she pressed the bear's paw, my recorded voice would say, "I love you, Sophia," in a message she could replay whenever she wanted comfort or reassurance. The gift represented my desire to maintain connection with her, regardless of what happened between the adults in her family. The morning of the party, I dressed carefully in my best clothing, navy blue slacks that Martha had helped me select, white button-down shirt pressed to perfection, the silk tie Martha had given me for Christmas last year, our final Christmas together as husband and wife. I wanted to look dignified and appropriate for the photographs that would document this important family milestone. Victoria's initial instructions seemed perfectly reasonable. "Rick, you'll help serve food and drinks to guests throughout the party." And then I realized I was set up. Guests began arriving promptly at noon for the afternoon birthday celebration. I greeted neighbors cordially, people who had known and respected me for 20 years of shared community life. Victoria introduced me to new acquaintances with calculated politeness. "This is Rick, Nathan's father. Not Sophia's loving grandfather or our family member Rick. Nathan's father." As if my primary identity was being someone else's familial obligation. Some neighbors remembered me fondly from before Martha's death and my subsequent life changes. They asked thoughtful questions about my health, my adjustment to retirement, and my experience living with Nathan's young family. These conversations felt normal and genuinely caring, reminding me of the social connections I'd lost during my grief and isolation. Victoria documented every moment of the party for her Instagram stories, positioning herself as the perfect hostess while directing me toward increasingly obvious servant roles. "Rick, can you refill everyone's drinks? Rick, can you monitor the grill while Nathan mingles? Rick, can you clear these plates from the tables?" I felt useful contributing to Sophia's special celebration, even if my role was more functional than familial. Sophia opened her presents while sitting comfortably on my lap, which felt like a grandfather's natural place during such moments. For those precious minutes, everything seemed normal and loving, like real families should function during milestone celebrations. Victoria recorded every gift unwrapping, every smile, every hug between Sophia and her party guests. Content creation was her primary focus throughout the celebration, with actual family connection being secondary to social media documentation requirements. I didn't realize I was being systematically positioned for public humiliation until it was too late to escape or defend myself effectively. The setup had been carefully orchestrated for maximum emotional impact and social media documentation. 40 people looked. No one said anything. The devastating moment arrived without any warning or preparation. Victoria suddenly transitioned her Instagram account to live streaming mode, broadcasting directly to her 50,000 followers while 40 guests watched in person. Her smartphone camera captured the entire backyard scene in real time for both physical and digital audiences. "Actually, I need to address something important publicly," Victoria announced with artificial confidence. Every conversation stopped instantly. Adults turned to look at her expectantly. Children continued playing, unaware of the approaching catastrophe. My stomach dropped with intuitive dread. I knew something terrible was about to happen. "Rick, you should eat outside in the yard rather than at our family table. This patio space is reserved for actual family members." Her voice carried clearly across the silent gathering. 40 people stared at me with expressions ranging from shock to uncomfortable embarrassment. The Instagram live stream captured my confusion, my hurt, my complete humiliation in real time for thousands of online viewers. "You're just someone temporarily staying in our house, not really part of our core family unit," Victoria continued with calculated cruelty. Nathan stood directly beside his wife, nodding in complete agreement with her public destruction of his father's dignity. "Dad understands his place in our household," Nathan added for emphasis. The silence was absolutely deafening. Neighbors looked genuinely uncomfortable witnessing this brutal social execution. Victoria's influencer friends seemed confused by the sudden hostility. Mrs. Johnson whispered audibly, "This isn't right at all." But nobody intervened directly. Nobody defended me publicly. Nobody challenged the cruelty being broadcast live to social media followers. My face burned with overwhelming shame. My hands began trembling uncontrollably. The birthday party continued around me as if nothing catastrophic had just occurred, while Victoria kept filming and narrating for her online audience. I went home in complete silence. I walked slowly toward the patio door leading back into the house, each step feeling like a marathon distance. Every eye followed my humiliated retreat, while Victoria continued her live stream commentary for social media followers. The party atmosphere resumed around my departure as guests tried to restore normal conversation, despite witnessing something genuinely disturbing. Sophia noticed my movement toward the house and ran after me on her tiny 3-year-old legs. "Where are you going, Grandpa?" Her innocent question broke through my emotional numbness like a knife through protective armor. I knelt down to her eye level, fighting desperately to control tears that threatened to overwhelm my composure completely. "Grandpa just needs some fresh air, sweetheart," I managed to say with a reasonably steady voice. I kissed her forehead gently, memorizing the softness of her skin and the sweet scent of birthday cake frosting. This might be my last normal moment with her before everything changed permanently. "I love you, Sophia. Always remember that Grandpa loves you more than anything in the world." She hugged my neck tightly with complete unconditional affection. "I love you too, Grandpa Rick," she replied with perfect sincerity. Then I walked inside their house alone, leaving behind 40 witnesses to my destruction and one granddaughter who still saw me as worthy of love. The laughter and celebration continued in the backyard, while I sat on my bed in the converted garage room, processing the complete annihilation of my dignity and family position. My own son had actively participated in my public humiliation. My granddaughter was the only person present who still considered me family, rather than an inconvenient burden to be managed and eventually discarded. That recording changed everything. I sat on my bed in the converted garage room while guest cars gradually departed and party cleanup began outside. The celebration was ending, but my emotional devastation was just beginning to fully register. Nathan approached my door around 9 o'clock that evening, probably sent by Victoria to attempt damage control after their public cruelty. "Dad, Victoria didn't really mean what she said out there," Nathan began with unconvincing defensiveness. His tone suggested he was trying to convince himself as much as me. "Yes, she absolutely did mean it," I interrupted calmly. "And you agreed with every word she said." My voice remained steady and controlled. No shouting, no emotional outbursts, just cold acknowledgement of reality. Nathan tried again with weak justifications. "We're under enormous financial stress right now. Sometimes that makes people say things they don't actually mean." I looked directly into his eyes. "I understand the situation perfectly now." The conversation ended there. Nathan stood in my doorway for several long moments, perhaps hoping for forgiveness I couldn't provide, absolution for behavior that was absolutely unforgivable. Finally, he left me alone with my thoughts and my smartphone. I pulled out my phone and scrolled through the recorded conversations I'd been collecting over the past few days. 12 minutes of Nathan and Victoria discussing my death like a quarterly business review, calculating timelines for their inheritance windfall, analyzing whether my current stress level might accelerate their payout schedule. Everything made perfect sense now. I wasn't family to them. I wasn't even a human being deserving basic dignity. I was a life insurance policy with legs, temporarily inconveniencing them while they waited for their payday. The recording had captured their true feelings with crystal clarity. I played the devastating recording again at 3 o'clock in the morning when the house was completely silent. Victoria's voice came through clearly. "How much longer do you think until the old man finally croaks?" Nathan's response was equally heartless. $1.8 million is definitely worth waiting for, but sooner would be better than later. Their conversation continued with calculating coldness that shocked me despite expecting cruelty. "All this psychological stress should speed things up naturally," Victoria observed clinically. "Yeah, Dad's not looking particularly healthy lately," Nathan agreed with obvious satisfaction. They discussed specific strategies for increasing my stress levels through social isolation, increased workload, and emotional manipulation. Nothing they planned was technically illegal, just systematic psychological pressure designed to accelerate my death through natural causes, making me feel unwelcome in their home, overworking me with household chores and servant duties, cutting me off from social connections and community support systems. They wanted me dead, and they wanted my death to occur as quickly as possible. The 12-minute recording provided clear evidence of elder abuse, financial exploitation, and conspiracy to defraud an insurance company through accelerated death tactics. But more importantly, it revealed their authentic hearts and true motivations. These people didn't love me, care about me, or value me as a human being. They loved my death benefit and were actively working to collect it. I thought about Martha's dying words with new understanding. Promise me you'll find peace. Real peace couldn't coexist with people who were literally counting down to my funeral for financial gain. I had to choose between maintaining family connections and preserving my basic human dignity. They don't just want me dead, they want me dead soon. I spent the remainder of that sleepless night researching estate law and insurance regulations on my smartphone. The legal facts were crystal clear and completely in my favor. As the policy owner and premium payer, I retained absolute control over all aspects of the life insurance contract, including beneficiary designation, payment scheduling, and policy cancellation. The insurance company required only my signature and proper identification to make beneficiary changes. Nathan had no legal rights to the policy during my lifetime. He wasn't a co-owner, just a designated beneficiary whose status could be revoked instantly with a simple phone call. The same principle applied to my banking accounts, pension payments, and all other personal assets. I could also redirect every dollar of my financial resources without Nathan's knowledge, permission, or involvement. He had no legal claim to any of my money while I remained alive and mentally competent. I wasn't a helpless elderly victim without options. I was a financially independent adult with complete control over my own legal and financial affairs. Martha's final words suddenly carried different meaning. Find peace. Peace meant eliminating toxic people from my life completely, regardless of family relationships or social expectations. They wanted my death money desperately. They would receive exactly nothing from my eventual passing. I began planning my systematic withdrawal from Nathan and Victoria's exploitation scheme. Every action would be completely legal, quietly executed, and absolutely final. No violence, no confrontation, no dramatic scenes, just strategic removal of myself and my assets from people who saw me as a financial opportunity rather than a human being deserving basic respect and dignity. They had made their choice at Sophia's birthday party. Now I would make mine with equal determination and much better legal positioning. The next morning I maintained completely normal behavior while internally operating in full strategic planning mode. Victoria issued her usual servant commands. Rick, please clean up all the backyard party mess before noon. I responded with calm agreement. Of course. But while picking up discarded paper plates and empty cups, I was calculating my exit strategy with methodical precision. I called the insurance company from my car during a supposed grocery store trip. I contacted my bank to schedule an appointment for major account changes. I researched apartment listings near downtown, focusing on senior-friendly communities with reasonable rent and month-to-month lease options. I organized all my important documents: birth certificate, Social Security card, insurance policies, bank statements, and Martha's will. Every action was calculated for maximum effectiveness with minimal immediate detection. I was finally ready to choose myself over people who viewed me as a walking financial investment. Martha's memory deserved better than watching me accept abuse from our own son. My remaining years deserved dignity, respect, and genuine human connection rather than exploitation and manipulation. I wasn't running away from confrontation or difficult family dynamics. I was walking away from a toxic situation with purpose, planning, and complete legal authority to control my own life decisions. For the first time since Martha's death, I felt genuinely hopeful about my future possibilities. The people who wanted me dead for money would discover exactly how much they'd lost through their greed and cruelty. Not because I wanted revenge, but because I finally understood my own worth and power. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself is remove toxic people from your life permanently, regardless of their relationship titles or family connections. They had chosen money over family. I was about to show them the true cost of that decision. They couldn't have expected what I did next. Tuesday morning, I drove directly to the insurance company office in downtown without telling Nathan or Victoria about my destination. The customer service representative, a kind woman named Patricia, confirmed everything I'd researched online. As the policy owner, you can change the beneficiary designation at any time, Mr. Coleman. No special paperwork or waiting periods required. I changed the $1.8 million death benefit from Nathan Coleman to the Martha Coleman Foundation for Cancer Research. Patricia smiled warmly at my decision. That's such a beautiful way to honor your wife's memory and help other families fighting cancer. I signed the official paperwork, feeling an enormous weight lifting from my shoulders. The beneficiary change was effective immediately. Nathan would never receive a single penny from my death, but he wouldn't discover this reality until receiving official notification after my actual funeral someday in the distant future. Meanwhile, Martha's legacy would fund cancer research and support services for families enduring what we had experienced during her final months. After completing the insurance changes, I drove past a promising apartment complex and scheduled a viewing appointment for Thursday afternoon. The building specialized in independent senior living with one-bedroom units starting at $1,200 monthly. Perfect for a man beginning a new chapter of his life at 64 years old. I felt genuinely excited about my future for the first time since Martha's death 8 months earlier. Independence, dignity, and self-respect were worth more than maintaining toxic family relationships with people who wanted me dead for financial gain. I was reclaiming my power and my life from people who had systematically destroyed my emotional well-being through calculated exploitation and public humiliation. The next phase of my plan involved securing complete financial independence from Nathan and Victoria's ongoing attempts to control and manipulate my resources. The next step was even more shocking. Wednesday morning, I visited my bank and requested a meeting with the branch manager about major account restructuring. I removed Nathan's name from all joint checking and savings accounts, transferred my $260,000 to a completely new account at a different financial institution across town, and changed my monthly pension direct deposit to the new bank. I also closed the credit card that Nathan and Victoria had been using for their unauthorized shopping expeditions and luxury lifestyle expenses. Their $2,400 in fraudulent charges would be their final theft from my personal finances. I opened a new post office box for all future financial correspondence to ensure Nathan couldn't intercept important banking or insurance documents. The bank manager assured me that all changes were completely legal and immediately effective. "You're protecting your financial independence," she observed. "That's always wise regardless of family pressure or expectations." I felt empowered making these decisions rather than guilty about protecting myself from exploitation. At a legal aid clinic, I documented the elder abuse situation with recorded evidence and financial transaction records. The attorney confirmed everything I'd done was not only legal, but strategically intelligent. "You're establishing appropriate boundaries with people who are financially exploiting you," she explained. "This isn't mean or vindictive, it's necessary self-protection." I deliberately left exactly $500 in the original bank account to avoid triggering immediate suspicion from Nathan or Victoria. They would discover the account changes when they attempted their next unauthorized shopping expedition, but not before I'd completed several additional strategic moves. My systematic withdrawal from their exploitation was proceeding exactly according to plan, with complete legal authority supporting every decision. Nathan will find out in 3 days. Thursday afternoon, I toured the senior living apartment complex and immediately signed a lease agreement for a one-bedroom unit on the 3rd floor with excellent natural lighting and a small balcony overlooking landscaped gardens. The monthly rent of $1,200 was easily affordable with my pension income and personal savings. I paid the first month's rent plus security deposit in cash, established utility connections, scheduled internet and cable installation, and arranged the move-in date for the following Monday. Everything was progressing smoothly toward complete independence from Nathan and Victoria's household control and manipulation. I also purchased a new smartphone with a different phone number that only Mrs. Johnson would receive in case of genuine emergencies involving Sophia's welfare. I needed one trusted contact who could reach me if my granddaughter required help or protection, but I wasn't obligated to maintain communication with people who wanted me dead. I began discreetly moving my most important possessions from the garage room to my car throughout the week. Photo albums documenting my life with Martha, important legal documents and financial records, clothing items that still carried Martha's perfume scent from our shared closet. Everything that held genuine emotional value would be safely relocated to my new apartment before Nathan and Victoria realized what was happening. For the first time since Martha's death, I felt genuinely hopeful and excited about my future living situation. My own space where I would be treated with dignity and respect. No one ordering me around like domestic help. No one stealing my money for luxury purchases. No one discussing my death as a business opportunity. Freedom was just days away from becoming reality. And then Nathan finds out about the account. Friday evening, Nathan attempted to purchase groceries using the credit card I'd secretly canceled earlier in the week. The card was declined at the checkout counter with several people waiting behind him in line. He called the bank from the grocery store parking lot in obvious confusion about the declined transaction. "Sir, that account was closed by the primary account holder 3 days ago," the customer service representative explained. Nathan rushed home in a state of panic, probably calculating how many other financial changes might have occurred without his knowledge. "Dad, what the hell did you do to our bank accounts?" Nathan demanded angrily the moment he entered the house. His voice was sharp and confrontational, revealing his true feelings about my money versus my well-being. I remained completely calm and composed. "I took control of my own personal finances," I replied matter-of-factly. "We had a financial arrangement," Nathan protested desperately. "No, you had an assumption about controlling my money," I corrected. "I never agreed to fund your lifestyle indefinitely." Victoria appeared from another room, immediately joining the confrontation with her characteristic lack of emotional control. "You can't do this to us," Victoria screamed. "We have bills to pay and expenses to cover. I can do whatever I want with my own money," I responded calmly. "And I have." My voice remained level and emotionless. No anger, no shouting, just factual statements about my legal rights and personal decisions. The power dynamic between us had shifted completely. I was no longer their financial victim or emotional punching bag. I had become a person with resources, options, and the determination to use both strategically. Nathan called, his voice panicked. I offered Nathan and Victoria one final opportunity to salvage our relationship through changed behavior. "You have a simple choice. Treat me like a respected family member, or I will leave your house permanently." My ultimatum was delivered calmly but with absolute finality. Victoria's careful social media mask slipped completely. "Where will you go? You're broke and helpless without us." Her assumption about my financial dependence revealed how thoroughly they'd misunderstood my actual situation. I have $260,000 in savings plus a monthly pension of $2,100. I'll be perfectly fine living independently. Nathan's face went completely white as he processed this financial information. He'd been operating under the assumption that I was economically dependent on their charity and goodwill. "Dad, please reconsider. We genuinely need you here with our family. You need my money and my eventual death benefit. There's a significant difference." Then I mentioned the recorded conversations that had captured their true motivations and heartless calculations. "I have some very interesting discussions saved on my phone that reveal exactly what you both think about my continued existence." Their faces immediately changed from anger to fear as they realized I possessed concrete evidence of their elder abuse and financial exploitation schemes. They knew precisely what conversations I was referencing, and they understood the potential legal and social consequences of that evidence being shared with authorities or community members. Finally, I am free. Saturday morning, I packed my final suitcase in the garage room while Nathan and Victoria whispered frantically in their kitchen about damage control strategies and legal implications of the recorded evidence I possessed. 3-year-old Sophia appeared at my doorway during the packing process, sensing something important was happening. "Are you going bye-bye, Grandpa?" she asked with innocent concern. This moment represented the most difficult part of my entire liberation process. I knelt down to her eye level, struggling to maintain emotional composure while explaining a situation she couldn't possibly understand. "Grandpa has to find his own home, sweetheart," I said gently. "Sometimes grown-ups need to live in different places to be happy and healthy." I gave her the special teddy bear with the built-in voice recorder. "Whenever you press this button, you'll hear Grandpa say, 'I love you, Sophia.'" She hugged me tightly around the neck with pure, unconditional affection. "I love you too, Grandpa Rick," she replied with perfect sincerity. That moment of genuine love almost shattered my resolve to leave permanently. I loaded my car with everything that mattered to me while Nathan and Victoria watched from their living room window. 37 years of marriage memories, important legal documents, personal possessions that connected me to Martha's memory and my previous life of dignity and respect. I drove away from their house without looking back at the rearview mirror. In the distance, I could see Sophia standing at the front window, waving goodbye with her tiny hand. That image broke my heart. But sometimes loving someone means protecting yourself from people who would destroy you systematically for financial gain.
A week later, I received an email. I want to ask you something. If you were in my position, 64 years old, widowed, treated like a servant by your own son while they wait for your inheritance, what would you do? Let me know in the comments, because what I did next surprised even me. My new apartment exceeded every expectation I'd had about independent senior living. Clean, simple, peaceful spaces designed for comfort rather than social media documentation. I purchased a small houseplant for the kitchen windowsill and seriously considered adopting a rescue dog for companionship and security.
My neighbors were friendly older adults who treated each other with natural respect and consideration. No one ordered anyone else around like domestic staff. No one stole money for luxury purchases. No one discussed death timelines as business opportunities. Normal human interactions felt almost foreign after months of psychological manipulation.
I joined the community center and volunteered with senior programs that helped elderly people navigate financial exploitation and family abuse situations. Sharing my experience helped other people recognize warning signs I'd initially missed during my grief-induced vulnerability. For the first time in 8 months, I slept through the entire night without anxiety or emotional disturbance. I hadn't fully realized how much psychological stress I'd been carrying until it disappeared completely. Looking at Martha's wedding photo on my nightstand, I felt her spiritual approval of my decisions. She would have supported my choice to leave rather than accept systematic abuse from our own son. Martha had always believed that peace was more important than toxic family connections maintained at the cost of personal dignity and mental health. I was finally learning how to live again as an independent adult, worthy of respect and kindness. The email from Nathan surprised me.
Nathan began sending desperate emails within days of my departure. "Dad, Victoria apologizes for everything she said at the party. Please come home so we can work things out as a family." I didn't respond to his digital manipulation attempts. His emails became increasingly frantic as their financial reality became clearer.
He somehow obtained my new phone number, probably through persistent calls to Mrs. Johnson, and attempted emotional manipulation through phone conversations. "Sophia misses you terribly, Dad. She keeps asking when Grandpa Rick is coming home. You should have considered Sophia's feelings before you participated in publicly humiliating me," I replied calmly. "We can definitely work out all these misunderstandings," Nathan pleaded desperately. "No, we can't work this out. You chose money over family relationships, and now you live with the consequences of that decision." His final phone call ended with him crying pathetically and begging for forgiveness I couldn't provide. I felt sadness about the situation, but absolutely no guilt about my choices. I was no longer susceptible to emotional manipulation through crocodile tears or false promises of changed behavior. Some bridges burn for permanent reasons, and public humiliation while planning your death for inheritance money qualifies as irreparable relationship damage. Nathan had made his choice during Sophia's birthday party. Now he would experience the long-term consequences of treating his father like a financial investment rather than a human being deserving basic dignity and respect. And finally, Martha's letter. While organizing Martha's personal belongings in my new apartment, I discovered a sealed envelope I'd never seen before during our marriage. "For Rick, if family becomes difficult," was written in Martha's careful handwriting across the front of the envelope. My hands trembled slightly as I opened what appeared to be a prophetic message from my deceased wife. Martha's familiar handwriting filled 2 full pages with wisdom that seemed specifically designed for my current situation. She had somehow predicted this exact family dynamic with uncanny accuracy. "If Nathan ever forgets how to love you properly, choose yourself over toxic relationships," Martha had written. "I didn't fight cancer for 8 months just to watch you suffer afterward from people who should protect and honor you." Her words felt like spiritual permission to prioritize my own well-being over family obligations. "Find peace, my love. You deserve happiness, respect, and dignity during your remaining years on earth," the letter continued. "Don't let anyone make you feel guilty for protecting yourself from cruelty, even if they share your DNA." Martha had known our son's character better than I wanted to admit during our marriage. She'd observed his gradual transformation from loving child to selfish adult focused primarily on financial gain and social status rather than family connections and moral principles. Her final gift to me was explicit permission to save myself from Nathan's greed and Victoria's manipulation, spiritual approval from beyond the grave for choosing self-respect over toxic family loyalty. Martha taught me the last thing.
2 weeks after my departure, Nathan received an official letter from the insurance company that destroyed his financial assumptions permanently. Beneficiary designation for policy number 847-293-156 has been changed from Nathan Coleman to Martha Coleman Foundation for Cancer Research, effective immediately. Victoria had a complete emotional meltdown when Nathan shared the devastating news. "This is entirely your fault," she screamed. "You drove your father away with your stupid agreement to humiliate him publicly." Their massive credit card debt of $78,000 remained unchanged, while their expected inheritance windfall had vanished completely. Their monthly house payment of $3,200 became completely impossible without my financial support and eventual insurance payout. Victoria blamed Nathan for destroying their economic future through his participation in my public humiliation. Nathan faced the harsh reality of their financial collapse without any safety net or family support system. They were forced to sell their house at a significant loss during a declining real estate market and relocate to a much smaller apartment that reflected their actual income level rather than their social media aspirations. Everything they'd counted on for their lifestyle and financial security was gone forever because they couldn't treat me with basic human dignity. The consequences of their greed and cruelty were swift, severe, and completely irreversible. They'd gambled my death benefit against my self-respect and lost everything in the process. Their financial planning had been based on my dying soon, rather than their ability to generate sustainable income through honest work and responsible spending. They just realized what they lost. Mrs. Johnson visited my apartment complex a month later to provide neighborhood updates and express community support for my decisions. "Everyone knew something was seriously wrong with how they treated you," she confided. "We just didn't know how to intervene in family matters appropriately." Neighbors had gossiped extensively about Nathan and Victoria's treatment of me during neighborhood gatherings. Victoria's Instagram followers noticed my complete absence from recent family photos and posts. Her comment sections filled with increasingly uncomfortable questions from followers who remembered me from earlier content. "Where's Sophia's grandfather?" people asked repeatedly. "What happened to that sweet elderly man who used to appear in your family posts?" Victoria's attempts to ignore or delete these questions only generated more speculation and negative attention for her lifestyle brand. Nathan's real estate reputation suffered significantly when word spread throughout the community about his participation in elder abuse. Several potential clients specifically requested different agents after hearing about his treatment of his own father. Victoria lost multiple lucrative sponsorship deals when the story of my public humiliation leaked to elder advocacy groups on social media. Community organizations began using Nathan and Victoria's behavior as a cautionary example in elder abuse prevention seminars and family counseling sessions. Their names became locally synonymous with financial exploitation and emotional manipulation of vulnerable elderly family members. Social consequences naturally followed moral failures, and their community standing was permanently damaged by their choices during Sophia's birthday party and throughout my residency in their household. Recording that conversation, I made the strategic decision to forward the 12-minute recording of Nathan and Victoria's conversation to Nathan's real estate company management. His supervisor needed to understand the character concerns surrounding an employee who financially abused and emotionally manipulated his elderly father while planning to benefit from accelerated death. Nathan's boss launched an internal investigation into character and ethical concerns about employees whose personal behavior might reflect poorly on the company's reputation and values. Several clients had already complained about Nathan's involvement in elder abuse, which affected the company's community standing and referral business. Victoria's remaining influencer partnerships ended abruptly when the recording went viral within elder advocacy circles and social media accountability groups. Sponsors couldn't associate their brands with someone who had systematically abused an elderly family member for financial gain. The recording also reached community groups focused on elder abuse prevention and family counseling services. They used Nathan and Victoria's documented conversation as educational material in workshops designed to help elderly people recognize financial exploitation and emotional manipulation from family members. My decision to share this evidence wasn't motivated by personal revenge or vindictive satisfaction. I was protecting other elderly parents from similar exploitation by exposing the calculated cruelty that some adult children employ against vulnerable family members. Justice was being served through natural consequences and community accountability rather than legal punishment or violent retribution. Nathan and Victoria faced complete professional and social consequences for their documented cruelty towards someone who had loved and supported them unconditionally. Sometimes leaving is the strongest way. 6 months after leaving Nathan and Victoria's house, I was healthier and happier than I'd been since Martha's death brought grief and vulnerability into my previously stable life. My volunteer work with cancer support groups helped families navigate the financial and emotional challenges that Martha and I had experienced during her illness and treatment. I developed genuine friendships with people who respected my experience, valued my wisdom, and treated me with the dignity that every human being deserves regardless of age or family status. These relationships were based on mutual respect and shared interests rather than financial exploitation or inheritance expectations. I was even considering the possibility of dating again in the future, something Martha would have encouraged and approved of completely. She'd always believed that love multiplied rather than diminished when shared with multiple people throughout a lifetime. I adopted a rescue dog named Hope, a sweet golden retriever mix who greeted me with pure, unconditional joy every single day. She provided companionship, security, and the simple pleasure of caring for another living creature who appreciated my attention and kindness. My modest one-bedroom apartment felt more like home than Nathan's house had ever felt during my months of exploitation and manipulation. I'd created a peaceful environment where I controlled my own daily schedule, financial decisions, and social interactions without interference from people who wanted me dead for money. The Martha Coleman Foundation had received the full insurance benefit and was actively funding cancer research programs and family support services for people enduring what we had experienced. Martha taught me the last thing. I'm holding Martha's wedding ring in the golden afternoon sunlight streaming through my apartment window. The diamond catches the light beautifully, just as it did on our wedding day 37 years ago, when we promised to love and honor each other through all of life's challenges and blessings. Martha taught me that authentic love doesn't require the sacrifice of personal dignity or self-respect. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do for yourself and others is walking away from people who view you as a burden rather than a blessing. Staying in toxic relationships doesn't help anyone involved grow or heal properly. To any elderly person listening to this story, you have inherent value that extends far beyond your financial assets or potential inheritance money. Your children don't own you simply because they share your DNA. Respect cannot be inherited automatically. It must be earned through consistent actions and maintained through ongoing good behavior. To adult children, your parents aren't financial investments waiting to mature into inheritance payouts. We're human beings with feelings, dignity, and the same need for respect and kindness that you expect in your own relationships. If you're counting down to our funerals for money, you've already lost everything that truly matters in life. Sometimes walking away is the strongest, most loving move you can make for everyone involved in a toxic situation. If this story resonated with you, please share it with someone who might need to hear it, and subscribe for more stories about finding strength when family fails you. Sometimes the people who are supposed to love us most are the ones who hurt us deepest. But remember, you always have choices, and choosing yourself isn't selfish when others treat you as disposable.